Bryan, this is shocking news. You were the first to report it. What led to this plea deal?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't see this coming, and I've been covering this story since the very beginning until Friday. On Friday, I started hearing some rumblings that there were discussions happening behind the scenes, which again, my indication was always that the prosecution wanted to take this to the very end, that Bryan Kohberger would never consider a plea deal, that the prosecution was intent on going after the death penalty. So Friday, I heard the rumblings. There were apparently discussions that happened over the weekend. There was an offer that was made. The prosecution ended up making this offer to the defense, saying that if Bryan Kohberger pleads guilty to all 4 murder charges and agrees to life in prison, no possibility of parole, no possibility of appeal, would also plead guilty to the burglary charge, that they would take death off the table. And I have learned that that offer was sent over last night to Bryan Kohberger's defense team, and that today they accepted the offer, they accepted the plea deal, so there will not be a trial.
And Elizabeth? This is a huge change, Bryan, because all along, Bryan Kohberger has been saying, it wasn't me, it was somebody else, I had nothing to do with it. He kept pointing to all these other people who it might have been implicated. He's been adamant about maintaining his innocence, and a very, very abrupt face now.
He has been adamant. Even his lawyer, Elizabeth, there were times in court where his lawyer said, I believe my client is innocent. I believe Bryan Kohberger is innocent. There was no indication that they would ever agree to a deal, and there was no indication that the prosecution would ever offer a deal. I can tell you many of the victims' family members, you read that statement, right now are in total shock and disbelief because this has never been brought up to them before this weekend and Friday when these rumblings started to pop up. They never thought a plea deal would be on the table, and they have more questions. Okay, even though he agrees to plead guilty, will there be some kind of confession? Will he say where the murder weapon is? Will some of these questions that they have be answered? They still don't know, they say.
And of course, the big question, why? I want to bring in Ashley Banfield, host of Banfield right here on NewsNation. Ashley, you've covered this story also from the very start. The families are in shock. Nobody seems to have seen this coming. Are you as shocked as everybody else watching this?
Yes, I am not only in shock, I think I share with Bryan a bit of sadness as well, because, Elizabeth, you've done this job long enough to know that there's always 2 sides of a courtroom, and one side will be unhappy. It doesn't mean that justice doesn't prevail. This is a different kind of justice. It doesn't feel like justice for a lot of people. Sure as hell doesn't feel like justice for Steve Gonsalves and his family, Kaylee's family. The other families, they weren't all in unison on the death penalty being mandatory in order to feel whole again. They'll never feel whole. Many of them didn't care at this point because they weren't getting their kids back. So it's really hard on the Gonsalves family because they did not want this, and families matter. Prosecutors take into account what victims' families want and don't want. Chris Watts' family's victims' family members said, okay, take death off the table. Let him plead guilty. Let him go behind bars for the rest of his life with no opportunity for parole and no opportunity for an appeal. And we're fine with it. But these families didn't all feel the same way. This is why I'm processing a lot at this point, just as strictly covering the justice of it. I don't know that everybody's feeling justice.
Why, Ashley, would prosecutors make this offer, and why didn't they reach out to the families to tell them? It feels like, I mean, this is all breaking as we speak. The families are just now issuing these statements, but it sure sounds like they weren't consulted. At least the Gonsalves family says it doesn't sound like they were.
So that's a tough one. Everybody operates differently. Every state operates differently, and then every jurisdiction within a state operates differently. I know that they've been at loggerheads at times with the Gonsalves family because they've been very vocal, and there's been this gag order. It's possible that we don't know. I reached out to Steve Gonsalves a little while ago. He's clearly processing a lot, but I haven't heard whether it is true. In fact, he didn't have any consultation prior to this. I would have a hard time believing there was no consultation prior to the media, finding out about it.